So welcome. I want to welcome to Pax Europiana, the podcast about peace in Europe. And today it's a very special honor for me to have a guest from Georgia, a beautiful country. I had the honor to visit in 2018 with my very good friend and also the founder and president of the New Economic School, which is one of the leading think tanks of Georgia, and Gia Jandieri. I'm very pleased that you have time to speak to the audience and tonight also to discuss about the history of economic reform in Georgia. And please introduce yourself to the audience first.
Okay, thank you very much. As Günther said, I'm the founder and the vice president of New Economic School, which is the free market think tank in Georgia. Mostly we are busy with the education of young people, how the market works, because we are the country which arrived from the Soviet Union, from planned economy. Now we need to study how to live and work in the market economy. So, and we're busy with teaching the economics for judges, for politicians, for journalists, and many different people, even including the professors of economics, because our professors are also from the Soviet Union. They need to know more about how the market economy works. So, and
on the 9th of April, 89, Georgia played a very key role to end the Soviet Union. There was this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, yes, absolutely. 9th of April of 1989 was I think, the very important momentum for Soviet Union, because I think Gorbachev understood that keeping Soviet Union was just impossible after that, because there were about 21 people died in that peaceful demonstration, and even Soviet Union announced about the curfew, like today with the pandemic, and it was whole day. It was prohibited to go to the streets. Next morning, the same morning, let's say, because this happened during the night, attack against the peaceful demonstrators. The same morning, 1 million people went to the streets. So they understood that this was helpless. In Georgia, it was impossible to continue the Soviet regime. So this was, by the way, in only four small republics of Soviet Union, like Baltic nations and Georgia, who rebelled against Soviet Union. And I'm sure that Georgia was. Pardon?
Georgia was instrumental to end the Soviet Union, in your view?
Yeah, absolutely, because Georgia was even different from Baltic nations, who were more disciplinized nations in the Soviet Union, and etc. But Georgia was the champion of the hidden economy, like underground economy. So I can assume that it would be about to 50% of our economy was underground. The official economy was the fake economy in reality, because it was producing very low quality goods, but on the other side of the scene, we all knew that there were some illegally operating companies with some people would be calling these cechs. This was like a small part of the big factory. So the Soviet Union was absolutely wrong economic system. And there are many things written about this, of course, but I assume that many of those authors, they never had touch with the realities of Soviet Union. And
on the 9th of April 91, Georgia declared independence. How was the economic situation at that moment?
So after the event of 1889, I mean, you mentioned about the April 9 of 89. So we all understood that the Soviet power was declining in Georgia. So it did not have, communists did not have any more influence. But we had general elections in 1990, the first free elections after 1921. And the communists lost these elections, even though they had big power in their hands. I mean, all the administrative power in their hands. But they lost the elections by 60 to 40%. So, but after the elections, even they lost this 40% because many of those communists moved to the side of the national movement guys, and the communist party was dissolved at all. At the end of 1990, Soviet Union did not exist anymore in Georgia. And then we needed some official recognition. So in the end of March 1991, we had a referendum. I was the member of the Central Election Commission, and I was the part of this referendum. And more than 80% of population, even in the places like Abkhazia and so-called South Ossetia, they voted for independence of Georgia. So, and after less than 10 days, we had the parliament meeting, and they announced they restored the independence of Georgia officially. This referendum gave us the official recognition by the people that the people were happy with the independence. And if you ask me who were the others who did not support in the referendum the elections, the independence, these were mostly some Russians who still lived in Georgia, and some others who then left Georgia, etc. So, but you can say
the
Soviet Union.
President Gamsakhudia.
Pardon?
The president was Gamsakhudia, the first president.
Gamsakhudia became president, by the way, later in May, because we had presidential elections in May. And he won the elections very, very easily. So and we can say even that these 2 years, this was the preparation for official recognition, but the communists did not have power already in Georgia in the spring of 1989. So the Moscow understood that it was impossible to do anything, and even Communist Party in Georgia, it was doing no opposition, no barriers to independence. It was visible that they did not have any power, because people simply hated Soviet Union, simply hated the Communist Party, and nobody believed in such things like communism and the private property life was acceptable for everybody very easily, and the public institutions were so weak that nobody was respecting them, including of the public health care, for instance. The public health care was a total failure in Georgia.
In December 91, the communists made a counter coup, and then Shevardnadze took the power again in 92.
So it's very difficult to say what happened in reality. There are only some opinions about different people. For what happened with Gamsakhudia, I think that he had too much power, and he was unable to control the people under him, let's say, and people who worked in the local places, they could do some wrong things, and people were irritated. So you can say that Shevardnadze came in time for one reason, that the Shevardnadze was very practical person. He understood that if this cope continued longer, then Russia would be able to blow up the situation and regain the control of the situation in Georgia. So he knew Moscow much better than others in Tbilisi. So I cannot blame Shevardnadze for all these things, and if he was directly involved in the scope, because I have no witness, I have no documents for that. But many people can say this, they have the opinion that Shevardnadze was directing this revolution against Gamsapurdia, but I cannot say this. For many reasons, Shevardnadze was much more knowledgeable about how Moscow was operating and how a KGB was operating than we others in Tbilisi. So if you ask me, he came in time for one reason, that if we continued this anarchy, what we had after Gamsapurdia was dismissed and he escaped from Georgia to Armenia, then Russia could have regained the power in Georgia, because their military forces were still in Georgia. So, but this is very uneasy question. You know, I have no real documents about what
about
you say.
economics then? Shevardnadze was then from 92 to 2003 in power. Can we describe this period as a kind of lost decade for the economic development? And what was the level of economic development in this decade from 92 to 2003?
Yeah, that's very important thing, absolutely, because Georgia's economy, I think, lost its power by almost 80%. So the GDP per capita dropped by 80% during the first half of the 1990s. So you cannot blame Shevardnadze in this only, if you can anyway blame Shevardnadze in this, but Gamsapurdi also did some wrong economic policy things during his presidency. For instance, he freezed prices for electricity, for the bread, and some other things, and this had long-lasting problems in the economy. But on the other hand, why I started talking about Soviet Union economy, and why I was saying at the beginning that Soviet Union was the wrong economy, because Georgia faced all kind of consequences of this central planned economy and wrong type of organization of this economy at the beginning of 1990s, because we were the part of the empire, which was the closed borders empire of evil, like Ronald Reagan called this Soviet Union. But that meant also different thing, that Georgia did not have any economic ties with the world. The only few companies could export something abroad, but everything was organized through Moscow, of course, and Georgian companies did not have their own partners in the world. And the other thing, that the quality of goods in Georgia were so bad that nobody would be buying Georgian goods. This was the major problem of after Soviet Union economy of Georgia. That, for instance, we had the huge plantations of tea, but as we are in the west of Georgia, near to the Black Sea, but as we are the northeast part of the subtropics, not all the tea plantations were producing good quality, but we would be producing that much to satisfy the demands of Soviet people, and not only Soviets, but in Eastern Europe also. But we knew that the quality was not that good to rely on this, for instance. But it was so bad that after yeah, I mean, because of the central planning mostly, they cultivated so much tea in the Western Georgia that plantations were too big and too bad quality. And this is a very good example that when they harvested the tea leaves, then they needed to blend it with Indian tea. And the Soviet Union was buying a lot of Indian tea to blend it with Georgian tea. And after Soviet Union collapsed, nobody needed this bad quality tea because there is Indian or Turkish or Kenyan or you name, Chinese or anything. So even Georgians did not want to continue consuming the Georgian tea. So this big industry, I mean, tea industry collapsed at once, just at once. And hundreds of thousands of people employed by this industry were just unemployed at once. One day they were unemployed. And you can talk about some other things like the wine production was so bad quality that only Soviets were obliged to consume the wine from Georgia or even Moldova. And after Soviet Union, there was no demand for this bad quality wine. And it collapsed at once also. But if you go to heavy industries, because we had also heavy industry factories in Georgia, like metallurgic plant in Rustavi or the uh, Kutaisi truck factory was producing trucks. And these were like factories which employed more than 10,000 people. And there was a military aircraft factory in Tbilisi, just in the center of the city. So there were many big factories, like 5,000, 10,000 people employed. But the goods produced by those factories were enormously bad quality. I was even joking that those factories are producing very high level scrap metal, and most of them were even selling this scrap metal and to Western countries. And when they finished with the reserves to produce this scrap, then they started selling all kind of metals from their factories. So this is what was Soviet Union. You know, they were producing goods just to satisfy Soviet demands, and even Soviets were rejecting to buy or who was asking them. But anyway, Moscow was obliging the factories in Ural and Siberia to buy Georgian pipes produced in the metallurgic plant. They were not asking them, but anyway, this was that way. So, and then when Soviet Union collapsed, nobody to buy the Georgian trucks because it was so bad quality that you cannot even imagine how bad quality were the trucks produced in Kutaisi truck factory. And because they could not run 200 meters after the factory, they needed to have maintenance after 200 meters. And the Kutaisi workers of that factory, they were joking about this, that they called these trucks Shinmosule. That means they never come back, never come back home, because they were trying to go and work, these truck drivers, and every 1 kilometer or every 2 kilometers they needed to stop and repair something and then continue the way, and sometimes sleeping in a truck because they could not go back to the garage. This was the reality. And when the people are talking about there was something good in Soviet Union, I'm always thinking that they never had any kind of realistic information what was there. That's why they are talking about it. I think that 70 to 80% of produced goods in Soviet Union were the scrap metal or this type of bad quality. And if you go to the Soviet ruble, for instance, I was myself trying to understand what would happen with euro. some 23 years ago. I said that there would be some nations who will be strengthening the euro and some will be weakening the euro. And this was the similar thing in Soviet Union. Russian or let's say Kazakh or Azerbaijan natural resources were strengthening the ruble and others were weakening, because if you were the person who sold something in Soviet Union, got the 1 million ruble, then there was a question, what could they buy with this 1 million ruble? And the scrap metal in, no, I don't need these pipes, I don't need this truck, I don't need this Volga or something, but what else? And you go and I buy natural gas or the oil or maybe wood or aluminium or nothing else. This was what was strengthening the ruble. But until when the oil prices went down, and if you ask me what helped the Soviet Union to collapse, this was first of all collapse of the oil prices from $40 per barrel to $8, and the Soviet Union stayed without the cash, without the hard currency. That uh, made the story quicker. Because if you ask me why Soviet Union collapsed, maybe there were some great leaders like Margaret Thatcher or Ronald Reagan who did lots of hard work to change the environment and also to convince Gorbachev to go forward with the reforms. But with the information I had already in 1980s, I'm absolutely sure that it would collapse by itself. The Soviet Union would collapse by itself not later than late 1990s, because it was visible. We were already using food stamps to buy food at the end of 1970s. So if somebody has illusions about Soviet Union, they need to understand that food stamps are not good things. They are bad things. And without food stamps, you could not get butter, for instance, or sugar, or meat. And from the beginning, they were giving us the food stamp for 200 grams of butter per person per month. At the end of the in the middle of 1980s, we were getting only 50 grams per person. So if it was the ideal economy, why it was not producing at least butter? It's not that difficult to produce butter in reality. But with this situation, Georgia entered the global market, and we did not have any partners, nowhere to sell our bad quality goods. And then the problems were simple like that we needed petroleum, and where can we buy the petroleum? Because Russia's economy was working only for Russia at that time, and they did not need Georgia anymore, because they needed to sell the petroleum outside to get the hard currency. So, and Georgia was not that strong to buy the petroleum in Russia. So, okay, now you are independent, you are free to go and buy, but where? You don't know anybody in the world. You don't know the companies selling they want to sell, but you don't know them. They don't trust you. You don't have money. You don't have credit from European banks to get this oil and transport to Georgia. And where can you keep them also if you even bring it? Because Georgia was unprepared absolutely with new realities. Because if we needed petroleum the time before independence, so you could have with the long trains coming from Russia or Azerbaijan. So now we are independent, we don't have partners. Azerbaijan production of oil collapsed, and Russia only pumping everything towards Europe to survive, and so we are out of oil. oil products, And then also one day the electricity provision from Russia was cut. I don't know, for political reasons, for practical reasons, but it was cut. 1993, I remember November of 1993, because Russia cut the provision of electricity and natural gas simultaneously. So you can imagine winter is coming and there is no heating, no gas, no electricity, and people started collecting branches of the trees and burning the books of Lenin and Stalin and other great leaders, let's say, at home, and heating their homes with this kind of stuff, nothing to do. And there was a shortage of food, but the people, instead of crying, oh, it was better to live in Soviet Union, they went to the courtyards of the apartment buildings and started cultivating some goods in their yards. You can imagine. And if some others, instead of saying that Soviet Union was not so bad and their factories stopped to operate, they went to the streets and started new life, selling goods from their homes and etc. And nobody was complaining. Nobody, just nobody. I don't know any person who was complaining why we abandoned Soviet Union or anything. They just understood we are free now. We can start our business, and they started their businesses, and it was a very painful start because everything collapsed, and you can imagine without electricity, not only that we could not heat our homes, but without electricity and natural gas, those factories also completely stopped. Only few companies which were to produce Russian production goods, they continued producing some chemicals, something, and that's all. All others just stopped to operate immediately. So you can say that unemployment reached maybe about 90%. In few first years, 90%, not 19, 90%. And when people think about, for instance, that something very huge collapse and crisis happened in Greece, I'm always saying, oh, you cannot even understand what happened in Georgia. Maybe Georgia was one of the richest republic of Soviet Union because of the illegal underground economy. And one day we became the poorest because everything stopped to operate immediately, But I can swear that despite of everything, we just continued our life and thinking about future that we can overcome this one day. And there was very huge crime also, very huge.
Let me ask as well, because Lithuania and Poland, they have already reformed very much in the 90s. Did
No,
Shevardnadze in Georgia also reform in the 90s until 2003? Or what was the level of economic reform under his leadership?
absolutely. And when I'm talking about the different positions of Eastern Europeans or Georgia or other nations in this communist community, let's say, one thing is very important to understand that some nations were less time in the communist regime, including the Baltics or Poles or the Slovaks or Czechs or others. They were maximum 50 years under communist regime. Georgia or Ukraine, they suffered much more. They were under communist regime more than 70 years, and also the communists exterminated most of the elite in these countries, like Ukraine, better than I what happened in Ukraine. But in Georgia as well, they killed most of the property owners, aristocracy, and then killed the people from the painters or the theater leaders or the etc. So they exterminated the elite of this nation. You can imagine what happened here. And this was before Poles became communists. We were under communist regime, I say 3 generations. They were only 2 generations. And when they became independent from Soviet Union and from communists, they had at least 1 generation who remembered what was the correct way of economy and how to restore the market economy. Because we did not have that generation in reality. We started from zero. And if we had people who had their illegal businesses in Soviet Union, they played mostly wrong role in the new life because they knew how to steal everything, how to corrupt somebody, how to use the state property, but not real business. Unfortunately, we were calling them red directors. They were the people who were operating the official factory, but on the other side, they were operating unofficial. And then we were calling them red directors because they were from Soviet Union. They knew only one business: how to steal and how to use the, um, uh, let's say, properties of the state, unattended properties of the state. So then it was very painful, as I said, but we started everything from the beginning. We needed new laws, new institutions, etc. And so it was very slow process. And these red directors also, by the way, played a bad role in the privatization process because they were opposing by any means the privatization process because it was about the properties. They were feeling this property was state property, but under their control. So they did everything to do everything to uh, oppose to the privatization. So, and then these reforms could be done in Georgia earlier, but they were always lobbying against the real reforms in Georgia, these people. And also, as I said, we did not have partners. We did not have uh, good advisors. Differently from Lithuanians, they had lots of good diaspora abroad and etc. But we did not have such support from the beginning. And by the way, one of the things what was mistake in Georgia that Georgian authorities never looked at the experience of Lithuanians or Estonians or Poles or others. They were just looking at how to translate laws from German laws or etc. And they were thinking about how well these German laws could be working in Georgia, etc. So, and without good experience, good knowledgeable people of taxation or economic policy, etc. We were just trying to mimic the European laws, and of course, with lots of lobbying, there were lots of mistakes, etc., and nothing was going forward. And the same with, for instance, tax code. We introduced tax code in 1997 because before 1994, we were just using Soviet tax rules. From 1994, we had 4 new tax laws, different laws. But from 1997, we united everything in tax code. This was the tax code which was proposed by the International Monetary Fund, like a kind of um, instrument for everybody to look and to try to make your tax code according to this example. No? But with lots of lobbying and lots of different mistakes, our tax code was absolutely wrongly used. And one thing, for instance, characterizing the situation is that we had about 22 different taxes, and almost nobody was paying those taxes. In reality, as I wrote in the Tax Foundation piece, in reality, most of the companies were paying lump sum to the tax authorities. One part as a bribe and one part as a payment, because nobody would be able to calculate the taxes. And because not only of the complexity of the tax code, but also because changes which were happening every month. And as we calculated in 2001, there were about 300 changes touching about 2,000 clauses in the tax code. So you can imagine that today uh, one rule works, tomorrow the second rule works, and day after tomorrow the third rule works. But after 2 years, somebody comes to audit your office and they can claim anything against you, because they can say that, oh, you did not fulfill that one, and nothing works. Like no explanation would be acceptable for them, that to say that, oh, I could not follow the changes. It was not really acceptable for them. So then they just invented the rule that we come, tell you how much you pay as a bribe and how much you need to transfer to the treasury, and then we will be covering you next time. Because nobody will come to you next 2 years. That was all, the all kind of. And one thing what I also forgotten, and this is very important, that as I said, the illegal economy was flourishing in Soviet Georgia. It continued during the independence time. And of course, this was, of course, connected with the corruption. And I can say very clearly that Georgia was, if not the number one in the world with corruption, it was maybe in the 10th highest level corruption country in the world. And if you ask me, uh, in 1990s, I would always reject that we Georgians are so stupid and so corrupted, so um, bad people that we could not avoid this corruption. But many were sure, absolutely sure, that Georgia would never overcome the corruption, never, ever. And with this controversy and with these difficulties, we came to the Revolution of Roses in 2003.
Year 2003, and the Europe was already moving towards enlargement of Lithuania, Estonia in 2004.
Yeah.
And then was the crucial year 2003. On the 2nd of November came the election, the fraudulent, and then the Rose Revolution. Can you describe
Yes.
the events and what happened and how it played?
So opposition blamed the President Shevardnadze in the election fraud, and people were also very tired with this situation in Georgia, with corruption, with very low level of life, etc. Because we saw that our former brothers in Soviet Union and Baltics were uh, going fast, and they were accepted to the NATO, to the European Union, and we were far behind. I cannot really blame Shevardnadze in all kind of scenes in this situation. I cannot believe that he was happy with corruption and he was involved directly, personally in the corruption, and he was taking bribes or anything. I cannot believe in this, because Shevardnadze uh, first appearance of in politics of Shevardnadze was in 1970s, when he became the first secretary of Communist Party in Georgia, and the major thing he was doing was to fight corruption. and he was well known in Soviet Union as a fighter against corruption. And thousands of people were imprisoned at that time for corruption. And also, he was fighting this illegal economy, and in that side, he did lots of bad things, because he not only imprisoned the people who were involved in the illegal economy, but also some of them were shot. I mean, they got the death penalty, because the Soviet Union rule was that if you stolen more than 100,000 rubles, there was a death penalty for that. So I think that Shevardnadze was a very tragic person for that, because he found this lesson, and after that, that's why he supported the reforms. And if you ask me who was the reformer in Soviet Union, I would say Shevardnadze was the first reformer, and then Gorbachev, because Shevardnadze went through all this tragic situation. And why I say this also, because in hidden way he was, for instance, supporting making films about tragedy of the Bolshevik rule in Soviet Georgia, and many other things like very some comedies about Soviet Union he supported, although these films were hidden to the public until the perestroika time. He was who ordered these films. You can imagine the first secretary of Communist Party was ordering films about the repressions in Soviet Union. It was just 100% impossible in Moscow, and he did this. But in the 1990s, he made lots of mistakes, and he can be accused in many things. But accusing him in corruption is impossible, because there is no such a thing that he himself was bribed or he himself was corrupted, etc. But of course, he could not manage to stop this corruption, and many laws were corruption dangerous. He was not enough good to understand that he needed to read everything. He trusted the parliament a lot, and he did not read everything if these new rules were uh, corruption neutral or etc. Then I was even a part of the special working group to elaborate the anti-corruption policy. But then he failed to fulfill all these things we proposed. But then there was people were too much tired with this, and they demanded just that there's a need of new government. And this young generation came. They were much more, let's say, civilized people, much more educated, much better understanding how the world is organized, and and also absolutely against of corruption, etc. So you cannot say they maybe.
The Rose Revolution in January, President Saakashvili was sworn in, and he started all these economic reforms. Can you describe
So
major
yeah,
developments?
that needs very clear explanation also, because these leaders of Rose Revolution, they came with lots of good ideas, but in reality, I cannot say 100% that they knew what to do with the economy. This is because it's not really easy. It's not easy. We cannot say that it's easy, but on the other hand, they were ready for any kind of big changes. This is what they were ready. But uh, Saakashvili was good with lots of things. One of the things was that he invited many Georgians from abroad to come and work with him. For instance, the Minister of uh, Energy Supply, he came from Ireland. He studied in Ireland, he lived there, but he returned back to help with managing the electricity problems. Because, as I said, as Russia cut the electricity and natural gas provision to Georgia for 10 years, Georgia was mostly sitting in the darkness, not only in the villages, but in the cities also. In the winter time, we had lots of problems because in summertime, we had many hydropower stations who could generate enough energy. But in winter times, we had very strong shortage of electricity. Even in the city centers, we could have 8 hours electricity, not more, per day. But in the countryside, people were joking that they were standing with their irons in their hand when electricity comes to start ironing quickly because it was coming for 5 minutes, and that's all. So this Minister of Energy Supply, who then became the Minister of Finance and then one of the last prime ministers of Saakashvili's time, Nick Gilauri, he was very efficient manager, and he managed the electricity problem so quickly that after 2 years, we became balanced neutral of electricity. And after 3 years from the beginning of the reforms, we started generating more electricity than we needed. So we became exporting nation of electricity. So we contracted natural gas provision with Azerbaijan, and since that time we did not have ever the problem of energy supply in Georgia. But also he called many others to his team from abroad, very best-minded people in the surroundings in Tbilisi. But one very important guy with the reforms was Kakha Bendukidze. That time, I met him first time in Moscow because he lived in Russia, and he was before coming to Georgia. He was of course Georgian, not Russian, but lived in Moscow. He had businesses in Russia. He was the leader of the Association of Russian Entrepreneurs. So he was lobbying lots of reforms in Russia. It was very tough, although one should confess that from the beginning, President Putin was very open to many reforms, let's say liberal reforms in the sense of European liberal. I don't know what happened with him after that, but you can say that from the beginning, he was much more open. So Kakha, living in Moscow and working with this Association of Russian Entrepreneurs, he was lobbying lots of good ideas there. But as he understood that it was quite limited, then very first call by Saakashvili to come back here, he came and he was interviewed already at the airport, and he said, "Oh, I see you are all socialists here. What are you talking about?" Because he said that we don't need government in the economy. We need more entrepreneurship and more business, etc. And then he became the minister of. From the beginning, he was the minister of the economy. Then he became minister of reforms, and during let's say 4 or 5 years, he was trying to push forward all these free market reforms. I cannot say that he was the only person who knew what to do, because we claim that we had also lots of good ideas, and I personally wrote the program for President Saakashvili when he was the first candidate for presidency in the beginning of 2004. But then what happened was that Kakha came and he started reading everything, including the ideas of different people and including of our legislation, which was full of corruption, dangerous things. And if you ask me how we eliminated the corruption in Georgia, there are 3 pillars of this. First, this is that we cleaned our legislation out of corruption dangerous things. This was done by Kaha very efficiently, and nobody would do that if not Kaha, because everybody were under some kind of thing. Who knows? Maybe we need this, maybe we don't need this. Kaha, with his huge experience, he said that we just don't need these things, and we abandon this. There will be no corruption immediately. And the second thing, that Saakashvili was very harsh towards the corrupted people, and he imprisoned not only the people from the Shevardnadze time, but also any kind of his own allies, where they were punished immediately. And the third thing, that they improved the reimbursement to the public servants. You can imagine the policeman could be having like let's say 20 euro salary per month, and what was done, that they increased the salary by 20 times immediately. They first of all, they kicked out all the corrupted policemen. This is about thousands, not about tens or hundreds, but tens of thousands of corrupted policemen were kicked out from the offices, and hired new young people in the police, who were taught what are the human rights, who were taught what is the constitution, etc. And they increased the salaries by 20 times, 30 times. Not only in the police, but in the customs, in the public services. And also what was done, that they decreased the number of public agencies very harshly, because we could have 1,000. After that, we had only 200. Or number of employees of the public offices, like Ministry of Agriculture could have 6,000 people doing absolutely nothing. And after the reform, only 300 people remain. Not the same old guys, but new guys who could really do something or supporting the reforms in the agriculture sector, etc. So this was very quick, very fast, very efficient, one side. But on the other side, you can think how many people were irritated with this. You can count how many people were very unhappy with these reforms. First of all, for instance, the policemen who were um, uh, fired, and their families. So then military people who were just kicked out from the military service with their families. The criminals, because Saakashvili was one of the most efficient person in the world to fight crime. One of the most efficient. Maybe they did lots of mistakes and lots of bad things, etc. But on the other hand, it was more efficient fight against the criminals, because Georgia was well known with the criminals, and it is still well known abroad, but not inside. So you can imagine how many people were irritated with these reforms, with these actions, etc. And so, and also after gaining so much power, after finding so many, after making so many good reforms, I think Saakashvili also lost his feeling of that there's a need of continuation of these reforms and making more steps forward. Although you cannot say that he stopped somewhere, but the quality of reforms did not continue as good as before 2010, for instance.
But in anti-corruption, you are now on 44 in Transparency International, and 7 member states of the European, like Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, are much worse, more corrupt than
Yeah,
Georgia.
yeah, yeah.
It's a big achievement.
Before the reforms, Georgia was 132nd. And if you ask me, it could be 180 because they did not know about what was the reality here. But all these reforms supported, for instance, tax reforms. Instead of 22 kinds of taxes, we have only 6 taxes, including the customs tax. So this means that it became much clearer, much easier to see, understand, and on the other hand, all whole system of taxation is on the internet. So you don't need papers, you don't need any kind of declarations, and it can be truly surprising for many Europeans that we have this and they don't have. For instance, if I buy something I'm a company and I'm buying something from another company. We don't need papers. They are sending me the invoice, VAT invoice, through the system. I see it, I pay through the internet, and if anybody has access to our accounts, they see also this operation through the system. Can you imagine this?
That is very good.
I don't need anything from them. I just need only one thing, the tax number, tax registration number. That's all. So, and then transfer is through the internet, and I can say also different thing that all our banking system is in the internet. So I can transfer money very easily with my telephone, and I know many developed countries they don't have that type of easy thing that I can transfer money with several touches in 1 minute. Just 1 minute, I can do any kind of operation with my phone. So the same thing with the taxation, that you can see your accounts, your obligations, your calendar of what you need to do, which day you need to do anything, and etc. etc. And no queues to go and pay taxes because you pay everything through the internet. No queue to bring the declaration or any document because everything is in the internet. So with this, so the taxpayers also don't need to bribe anybody. They have nothing to do with anybody, you know. If they come to check your accounts, if they need to check your inventory, for instance, or they have some suspicious information or something, then you have any touch with the tax authorities. Before, you have nothing to do with them. You do everything through the internet, and that's all.
Georgia is also one of the best countries in doing business of the World Bank in the ranking.
Yeah, because of these kind of technical things are so easy. For instance, I can give you one example that one American expert came here to find out how the land register works. And I was telling that nothing wrong here. Everything is good. You cannot even propose anything to improve here. But he insisted, and the Friedrich Naumann Foundation supported this trip. And then after 3 or 4 days staying here, meeting, visiting the offices, he said, I would be happy to have such a good system in the USA. No state such a good system that you have here. And I said, you remember I was telling you that we have a completely, perfect institution here with the land register, and you can do anything. I was meeting with my friend this today, and they told me that, can you imagine, we sold our apartment in 5 minutes through the internet. They didn't need to go anywhere. They sold the apartment through the internet, and we are not as, by the way, we are not as good as Estonia with this. We are the students of Estonia. Of course, we are the students of Estonia. By the way, it needs to say also that when we started the reforms, I invited Mart Laar, the former Prime Minister of Estonia. He was Prime Minister twice, to Georgia, to make some public speeches and encourage our government to make reforms to follow Estonian. But you know what happened? This is very good lesson for Ukrainians, for instance. I know Mart was in Ukraine and nobody understood him. But what happened that I invited business people to meet Mart Laar and in the afternoon, and I came to Mart to the Marriott Hotel and say, let's go now to the meeting. And one moment somebody comes to the restaurant or the Marriott and says that President Saakashvili is demanding that Mart goes with me to the cabinet meeting. He was running the cabinet meeting. And I said, no, we have the meeting with the business. And he said that Saakashvili will call them and apologize that he is stealing him to his meeting, to his cabinet meeting. And so Mart told me that I arrived to the cabinet meeting and Saakashvili was standing and he said, now I will sit and you listen to him, not to me. He knows how to make reforms, you know? And Mart became and he's my good friend. I visited him 2 years ago. He's ill, you know, he cannot walk now and he's in a chair. But he came here several times. And not only he came, but many people followed him. And every ministry in Georgia, any agency could have one Estonian guy in there living here and working with them. So if you ask me, I think that Mart Laar was one of the key persons who helped us with the reforms, because he came here with experience, positive experience, because we did not need negative experience or somebody who said that, oh, I was trying, but it was not working, and some people opposed to me or something. Mart was absolutely positive experience. He was the prime minister at the beginning, and then when Estonia reached the European Union also. So, and these Estonians did enormous job here, and all these reforms in the public registers and the taxation system, we just copied many things from them. But if you ask me what was the role of Saakashvili or others in this team, you know, I say that if this is easy, you try, because it was not really easy. Doing such reforms is a headache. You know that you gain many enemies after the reforms. So, but you do this because you are looking forward and not backward, and you want to see that everything will be working, etc. So maybe they made lots of mistakes, and some people are even saying that Saakashvili was a criminal because of that. But I trust what Kaha Bendukidze was saying. Kaha said that to make reforms, you need good ideas, but also somebody who will be covering you. And Saakashvili was to cover everybody, and he was to go and knock every door everywhere to say that we are a small nation, but we have lots of ambitions, and support us here, support us there, etc. But there were many facts are also hidden from the public. How successful was Georgia from the beginning? As I said about electricity, we became the net exporters of electricity in 3 years after darkness. You know, but there were some more things that we had double-digit growth during 2006 and 7, after just 2 years of the reforms. But most impressive thing happened with and not many people know about this, because I know from the direct source that the office of the International Monetary Fund was closed down in May of 2008. And I know this from the direct source because I visited that time the office, and I knew the head of the office in Tbilisi, and um, they were packing everything. And I said, "Are you moving to another place, or why you are packing?" And he said, "No, no, we are making archives. We'll put it this everything somewhere, and we are closing down our office." Can you imagine this? That's why I'm always saying that Ukraine is not in need of extra money. They have such a huge number of intellectuals there. They are more than 40 million people. What they need, what for they need, they are not just intellectuals, well educated people, etc. What was the difference between us and Ukraine. First of all, they were far behind of us with our independence, etc. But also that they needed to believe that survival of Ukraine is inside of Ukraine, not outside. So everybody who believed that Georgia was successful because somebody was supporting us, this is untruth. Support was like what we had from Estonia with the ideas, with their experience. And when you think that you need this experience, you follow, you listen. But if you have your ideas what to do, and they are not really connected with the realities, then you don't listen to these people. You just making something, and nothing really happens. That's what I think about why Ukrainians or Armenians did not go forward. But in Georgia, this was truth that not like that the fact of the revolution of roses was so important, but the fact that these people who were efficient guys collected in one team, and they decided that, okay, this is positive experience, why not to use? This is positive experience, let's use. That's why that one is also good. And then to understand what we needed, there were some very good surveys like Economic Freedom Survey of Heritage Foundation or the Fraser Institute or the Doing Business or the Transparency International, and they understood that we can invent ourselves how to measure the success, but let's try to fulfill all the things what they are demanding, and we'll be going forward step by step. That's what happened here, and that's why everything was,
reform. Did you also reform the taxation system in Georgia during the Rose Revolution?
that, yeah, as I said, we had 22 types of taxes, and we now we have only 6. But also there were taxes were cut, first of all, but also made flat. So, for instance, we had so-called social insurance tax. We don't have anymore. So, and the pensions or the healthcare provision is done through the budget. Because if you have social insurance tax, then you need the collection also the tax. So if you and social insurance is not really normal tax, so you cannot make the same type of audit of the social insurance tax like income tax. So it needed another inspection, another authority. So, and it was my proposal to eliminate this immediately, and that's all. And there is no tax, there is no problem. And also there were more things like inheritance tax or the environment tax, etc. And we were saying that with that way, you can come to the system that we have education tax, we have healthcare tax, we have that tax, we have that tax. Let's have most efficient taxes, which are collecting money from everybody, no privileges, nothing, flat tax, but no special taxes, which are to provide funding for roads or something. That's what happened, and I can happily say that this tax system was designed by us, by our friends, and fortunately it was supported by Kaha and by the government then, and they understood the reality that if you have many taxes, that it in reality invites corruption. It invites corruption, because if people cannot pay taxes, then next step is to find somebody to pay bribes and avoid the big taxes, and the tax burden declined from about 45% to around 24%. It was a big decline. In reality, you can call, 45% was officially, but in reality, it was 10% maybe, okay, 15%. Instead of paying 45% of burden, in reality, it was 15%, but maybe 10% was going to bribes. So now we have much cleaner situation, and the tax burden never overcame 27 or 28%. So,
did the government have enough revenue still?
Yeah, absolutely. What also happened was that the government could not collect more than, let's say, 700 million lari before the reform, and after 3 years of reforms, it was already collecting 6 times more. So, and in 2010, it was collecting 10 times more than in 2003. In 7 years, it increased tenfold. So when we talk about this, we always say that to be afraid of tax cuts is not a good idea. Because why these tax revenues increased in reality? Because of the economy was growing fast, and also legalization of many businesses. Instead of hiding somewhere, they went to the public and they started operating openly, and they started paying taxes, and this came to the treasury. So some people say, oh, it was because they were more harsh or different explanations. But I say that, okay, that reason or this reason or that reason, they became working only because they changed the tax code. Because if not changing tax code, everything would be the same like it was before. I even wrote such a thing in my piece about tax reforms, that before the reform, many companies would be hiring people but not paying salaries to them. Instead, they were paying to them dividends. And why? Because dividend was taxed by about 28%, and the salaries were taxed by about 40%. This difference between salary taxes and the dividend taxes was quite huge, 12%. So there was a very famous case of a bread company in Kutaisi, which employed 500 people. Nobody was receiving salary, you can imagine. And but they were all the shareholders of this company receiving the dividends. and nobody was receiving salary. So and that's why I say that after the reform, maybe some people are still thinking, and some of my friends, they say that they could be done better things. I'm also thinking that they could be done more things. But anyway, this simplification of the system and putting everything in the internet, and also making many rules much clearer, much easy to understand, made it its job. The many companies decided to go legal than to stay in the shade. And this comes to the corruption as well. Of course, if you have nothing to hide, then you can be also a normal citizen, not hiding from somewhere, and you can vote for whom you like, and you can also uh, protest against the government, which was impossible before, because everybody were feeling that they were guilty of hiding of taxes, and government could come every day and say, "Oh, we will be punishing you if you continue protesting or supporting opposition," or etc., etc. So this had very huge change in the environment, in a democracy. You cannot run democracy if the taxpayers are hiding. It's impossible. So, and of course there were more things. If you try to make a list of all the reforms, you need to have a big book of.
My question would be the big book, yeah, but about migration, because you were also opening the migration system to the world, and that's a
Yeah,
system.
absolutely. Georgia announced that it is a free and open country, and it never changed, by the way, that more than 100 nationalities, they don't need a visa to come, and other 100, they can get the visa online and come without problems, or they can have visa at the border, but they don't need this at the border because they can do this online. So, and also, there are no rules, restrictions for foreigners to live here or start job here. So if you have a job, normal, nobody says. Even I never heard publicly any discussions about that. Somebody um, saying that we don't need foreigners here. There was one attempt one day to introduce visas, I mean, working visas for foreigners, but it was rejected very quickly. And at least the foreigners from Western countries, they don't need visa. But then it comes to another reform, for instance, that reforms in pharmaceutical sector was so easy that we have about 6 chains of the pharmaceutical companies here uh, who could have cumulatively maybe 1,000 shops. But there are also 300 other companies who are working in the same sector. But the most important thing was how to license foreign medicines, imported medicines. And Kaha made such a thing that let's eliminate any kind of licensing of the medicines which are coming from OECD nations. Because he said that we cannot check the quality of those medicines better than they are doing. What more we need is checking of the quality here in Georgia. That's all. You can imagine how easy is this marketing after this, And also, they privatized all hospitals. As I said, there is a huge list of what they did, And the hospital privatization was very interesting, mentioned by Kaha Benduki himself personally, that most of the hospitals were located in the center of Tbilisi. He said, "What for? We need hospitals in the center where there is a smog and etc." And he said, "Let's offered this way, that if you buy a hospital in the center, you can have it for free. These territory buildings, okay, but you just need to promise that you construct new hospital in the suburbs of Tbilisi. And so this made the hospital business very quick. They privatized many hospitals in the center and organized some hotels or something there, but or the new apartment buildings. But instead, they constructed new, absolutely fresh, new technology hospitals, cleanest. We never saw that type of clean hospitals before in Soviet Union. And it was improving every day. And also as it was open and free market in the healthcare sector, then many companies, Western companies, came to invest in the healthcare system in Georgia. And everything was going forward very quickly, by the way. There was a queue of the investors in the healthcare system in Georgia. But this is not
a foreign investment coming in that phase during the 4 years of the Rose Revolution until 2008? A lot of foreign direct investment?
Yeah, of course. There was a record of the foreign investments, by the way, per capita at least. In 2007, we got 2 billion euros as a foreign investment. So far we never had any better year with this. But because when you clean everything and when everything is transparent and people understand what you are doing, then everybody want to come here. Everybody are looking for new markets, etc. So, but not only in that sector, you can say that there were many different sectors people wanted to invest here. Even some of our opponents were saying that, oh, you want to become another Singapore, like Singapore is a bad example for them. And we said, oh, of course we cannot reach the Singapore level quickly, but of course, why not to have the same level of life like Singapore? And we were really growing very fast. And if you go to Batumi, Batumi is the now second city because it was third city before the reforms. It illustrates that there was a huge interest in Georgia. So, but on the other hand, one must not hide the another reality of Georgia, that we are neighboring those countries which we are neighboring. We cannot really change their neighborhood. As I was saying, that some of the nations were ahead of these other nations in Eastern Europe, let's say, because there were less time under the control of communists. But another thing, who are your neighbors? And I can say that we are not really unhappy with our neighbors, except Russia, because it's occupied our territory and we don't have even diplomatic relationship with Russia. But with Turkey or Azerbaijan, Armenia, we have a very good relationship. But
let me
on the other hand, let me finish with this thing that people in Czech Republic or Slovenia, even Baltic states, they were much luckier with the neighbors. Not because of, I don't want to insult anybody. I very much respect Turkish people, for instance. But Turkish people are not that much developed as Swedes or Finland or Germany or Austria. They were just much luckier with the neighbors. And I'm explaining this way that if you live in Slovenia, you know that you need to wake up 6 o'clock to go to your job 7 o'clock because your neighbors in Austria and North Italy, they are already there. And if you are late, then you are losing your competitiveness. This teaches very much, you know. And also the second thing is that if you are in Slovenia or Czech Republic, you want to organize your business and how to do that. Okay, I go to Germany or Austria and look around how they are doing this business. For instance, car maintenance office or business, I mean, banking office or something. And I'm studying from the examples, not reading books, but I can go and see how they do this business, you know. And the third thing is they are rich countries. They can invest in your country. And if you look around Georgia, name me any such a good neighbor, good in this sense, you know. Even they are not good competitors also, you know.
Yeah, 2008 came and neighborhood. Your reforms were going very good from 2004 to 2008, but unfortunately maybe too good for Russia. In
Yeah,
2008, there was the Bucharest summit of NATO. You got the rejection in April in Bucharest. And then in 2008, in the summer, came the
yes.
Russian invasion in the north. And can you
I
describe
think
how
that
you felt?
Bucharest summit made a mistake. Not simply like not accepting us directly as candidates, let's say, but also to invent some conditions. It was not official condition, but it was said that Georgia would be uneasy with its internal problems, like Abkhazia or South Ossetia, so-called South Ossetia, because we don't recognize South Ossetia as a entity. But why? Because it encouraged Russia to blow up the situation. You can imagine what was the signal for Russia if Georgia negotiates with Abkhazia or South Ossetia and the situation is becoming calmer, then there will be no barriers for entering the NATO. For Georgia, it was a signal, go and negotiate. And we started immediately. But for Russia, it was a signal to blow up. And they sent the troops immediately to Abkhazia. Immediately, just second day, the troops were there. And they claimed that these were the troops to restore the railway. But we knew very perfectly that these were the provocative thing. But then there was a story which is uneasy to understand all the details. But what was perfectly understood that this was a big provocation, and of course, Russia was trying to blow up the situation to ensure that Georgia would not be accepted in the NATO. And they achieved this goal. Unfortunately, the West did not understood. This is my feeling, you know, I cannot blame anybody, but the West was late for understanding this situation. And maybe Georgian government made mistakes. It is a government, and the government of any kind of is making mistakes. You cannot, nobody can say that there was any government in the history which did not make mistakes, you know. And this was the very tough situation, and not making mistake was just impossible, no. Maybe we made mistakes also, but there were so many mistakes from the west also, that they were late to answer to this provocation. They were late to tell Russia stop when they saw the troops were arriving to Abkhazia, etc., etc. And then even when they entered Georgian territory, Russian troops, there were 3 times more troops, Russian troops in Georgia than Georgia had, you know. And the even administration of George W. Bush was hesitating to invent something to stop them. And when they announced that if Russia does not stop now, we will send our troops there, they just stopped immediately. Russians stopped immediately. They needed to say from the very beginning of this story, this is what we feel, because blaming Georgia is easy, because we are a small country with $16 billion of GDP. Now it was 10 billion at the time, and with the budget of the Ministry of Defense of maybe less than $500 million. And of course, we didn't have developed intelligence services, etc., but they had. Of course, they knew that Russian troops were coming to Georgia. They knew from the sky, for instance, that they could observe where the Russian tanks were deployed and when they were moving already towards Georgia, etc. I'm not trying to blame them. I'm just trying to understand. It was because it was too slow. The answer was too slow. But the mistakes followed after that also. That the hooliganic way of behavior of Russia was never punished. This was the biggest mistake. Not only about the occupation and recognition of these so-called South Ossetia and Abkhazia nations, but also that they did not make their relationship with Russia more strict. It needed, because this was completely hooliganic way of behavior, destroying all kind of world order, etc. And then I think that this hooliganic way, as it was not punished, was followed by others, not only in the region, but in the world also. There are more hooligans now than before. And it was a big mistake not to answer to this hooliganic behavior. And then it also resulted in annexation of Crimea, or occupation of Crimea, and the occupation of Donbass. And now everybody is thinking what to do. And they needed to think in 2008 about this, and not to hesitate, not to try to please somebody, etc.
Yeah, do you think that if Georgia would be accepted for NATO map in Bucharest in 2008, in April, would the war in August be avoided?
Absolutely not. There will be no war. Because it was provoked in reality, the war. Because we were trying to negotiate, and Russia knew that we had chances to negotiate. And I can tell you even more that time foreign minister of Germany, Steinmeier, he came to Georgia twice after this Bucharest summit. And then Frau Merkel also came to Georgia. And what for? This is a question. Why they were coming? Because they understood that the situation was more tense after this Bucharest summit. Not calmer, but more tense. So this is that they already understood. This is not only I who at least suggest this, but many others also. Andrei Ilarionov, former advisor to Putin, he wrote about this. He talked about the conference, about this thing at the conference in Tbilisi, for instance. That this was the not accepting Georgia, or at least promising candidacy or anything, was, and also, okay, unofficial, but some kind of conditions. Because, okay, of course, they could have different preconditions. For instance, that Georgia needs to bring defense spending to the NATO standards.
Yeah.
And then we can talk. Or these kind of things. But saying that Georgia has internal problems, and that's why we are hesitating about this. It was just call to Russia, or go and blow up the situation, Right. Maybe nobody wanted this, but it happened, I'm not trying to blame anybody. I'm just saying that practically this happened this way. And then, of course, there's many people thinking that they needed maybe Russia more than Georgia. They were trying to blame Georgia in this war, that like we provoked them. No, we could not provoke Russia in our territory. You know, it was our territory, and there was a story behind of many hundreds or thousands of provocations before that, and the killing of Georgian citizens, etc., etc. So, and it was known to everybody. It was not only that only Georgians knew about these provocations. Everybody knew about this.
And Gia, tell me, did you live in Tbilisi in 2008 during the war days? And what was your...
Yeah, I was here in my office. And I was writing to my Western friends to have attention. And even Andrei Ilarionov was mentioning about me that I was one of the few sources to understand what was really happening here. But, you know, I'm absolutely sure that we don't need war. Georgia is open and friendly country and free country. I counted many things. If anybody can say that with these reforms, Georgia was aggressive to its neighbors or anybody, you know, free, open, and uh, um reforms-oriented nation cannot be aggressive. You know, Georgian government even did not have time to think about aggression against anybody, and the reality was that it was opposite. That they were thinking about that if we do everything good, then maybe Abkhazians return to us because it was better to live with Georgians than with Russians. It is obvious now even that it's better. Russia is wealthier than Georgia because of the oil, okay? But still, many Russians are coming to live here now than Georgians to go to Russia to live. Many Georgians live in Russia because they went for economic reasons in the beginning of our independence, and they settled there and doing business there, etc. But why so many are coming here for? There is no tourism from Georgia to Russia at all. Zero tourism from Georgia to Russia. And more than 1 million people coming every year from Russia to Georgia. What that means? It means that we are freer, we are more open, etc. With all our mistakes or stupidities, we are a free country, and everybody are invited to come. And who did this for Russians, by the way? Who opened the doors for Russian citizens? It was Saakashvili who said immediately after 1 year after the war that let's open borders, no visa for North Caucasus people who live near to Georgia. They can come and trade and etc. But after 6 months or so, he said, "Oh, let's allow any Russian to come here because they need to see that we are not the enemies; we are just neighbors, etc."
After this
So,
terrible shock of the 2008 war, how did the second part of the Shakushvili presidency to 2012 continue? Were there more reforms, or was there basically...
as I said, it was not that speed of reforms because there was much more to do before. But also after the 2008, uh, I think after 2010, let's say, most of the orientation was to understand how European market works and how to integrate. So in 2006, Aha Bendukidze was the initiator of this, to have free trade with the European Union. And in 2010, you know, this Eastern Neighborhood project started with the lobbying of Swedish and Baltic nations. And then this accelerated. So all the attention was directed towards how to achieve free trade agreement with the European Union. And now we can say that we are maybe one of the few nations who have open doors for many visitors in Georgia. But also this is about that we have free trade agreements with 60 countries or so, and same number of the avoiding double taxation treaties with many nations. So I think that we have proven that we are the good neighbors. So, and when it comes to Russia, it is always the question why almost all nations around Russia are so uh, irritated and unhappy, because we don't need any kind of conflict with Russia. They need to leave us alone, because we found that they are not good neighbors during our 200 years of living together. And we don't say that, oh, you must disappear. We say that, okay, you for yourself, we will be for ourselves. Leave us alone. And we want to be in a club which is respecting the humans, and we want to be in a club which is respecting the treaties and the contracts and agreements, not with a club which is disrespecting the partners and disrespecting the humans. What we lost in your club, we say to Russia. We don't want to be in a club which is not respecting the individuals and humans. What is surprising here? Tell me what is surprising here. And also, if you want to understand what is wrong with Russia, you look in any kind of survey at the doing business or the economic freedom or the Transparency International or human rights, any, if you show me any survey which says that Russia is good, then we can say, okay, let's have business with them. But how can you have business with Russia when you know that the economic freedoms are suppressed there in Russia? How can you have business with a country which is huge bureaucracy and huge corruption and huge crime? You know, this is very easy to explain.
Putin was elected for his third term for president. And also in Georgia, there was a new president coming, I think also with Russian background, Mr. Ivanishvili. And so how you see the situation? Was there a continuation of reform in Georgia then after 2012 or not so much?
No, there were some obligations still after 2012 as we were approaching the European Association Agreement. So, and it was slowed down, but we reached this agreement in 2014, and there were some attempts to make more reforms, but very light, let's say. But there were some regress in the direction of labor rights, for instance. But in the taxation, we adopted the so-called Estonian model that any profit which is invested in your business, it will not be taxed, which is maybe good. It's like prolonging the payment of the profit tax, I mean, corporation tax. But still, some companies gained quite from this situation that they don't pay profit tax immediately, but investing this money, and if they have profit in future, they will be paying the tax in future. This is Estonian, so-called Estonian model, that the investments are not taxed, but nothing else comes to my mind to say that the reforms were continued. Even more that last good thing what Saakashvili did was the very much lobbied and designed by Kaha Bendukidze. It was the economic freedom law, which is a part of the constitution, which is saying that government has no right to increase tax rates or implement new taxes without referendum. So, and there was also a restriction on government spending of 30% to GDP, entire government, I mean, local government or the central government together, but also the restriction on the public debt and deficit. So first thing, like the restriction on implementation of new taxes or increasing tax rates, this government made change, saying that it will be abolished from 2027. Fortunately, this still works. The second thing of the 30% of GDP spending of the government, it was already abolished. And it was very strict discipline tool when the government was trying to be more careful. And unfortunately, you can say that IMF was looking at this with closed eyes, like it was normal thing, you know. And then obviously the restriction on the debt, public debt, and the deficit are also violated by the government now. So they were slightly more careful before the pandemic, but now they are, of course, everybody are blaming pandemic for wrongdoing, you know. And
2014, in 2014, there was the Ukrainian war starting with Crimea and with Donbass. And it was a big major shock also economically. Did it also hit Georgia hard?
I don't know, I cannot say, because in reality, Ukrainian economy has not such a big influence in Georgia like Turkish, for instance. The biggest trade partner for Georgia is Turkey, and European Union is bigger, but Turkey as an alone country, this is the biggest. But unfortunately, what happened that after we signed the trade agreement with the European Union, trade with the European Union is not really improving. You can say that one moment maybe it was 5% more than in 2014, but it was more stable. But the trade with Russia, it's skyrocketing. And maybe in nearest future, Russia will be the bigger partner for Georgia than any European country, which I feel this is a tragedy for us. And I approached to many embassies here, including of European Union representation office, with this thing that we have this trade agreement. And where are you looking for? Why you are not pushing more that we have agreement and nothing is developing here? And I don't see there is a big attention to this. I don't see this really. And there is something also very important thing here, very suspicious, which I cannot prove because unfortunately data is not available for this, that since 2014, Georgian lari was stable with Russian ruble and was declining towards US dollar and euro. That means that trade with the European Union became much more expensive, but quite easier with Russia. And I told to some people at the European Union representation, it's not normal. I said that maybe there is something wrong here. And I believe that there was artificial done. I can even talk about some evidence that this was artificial done, but I cannot show this evidence because it is from internal sources. But on the other hand, what is easy to see that if you look in the, for instance, French supermarket chain or Carrefour, it has maybe 5 to 10% of French goods, and maybe the same 10% from Turkey, and 80% from Russia. Can you imagine this? That's what I think, that this is a tragedy. And some people were sure that economy of Georgia would be behaving better if we have more trade with Russia. And I was always saying that it's nonsense, because there is no future with this. What differently from the European Union, Russian treaty is a trap. Russia is already well educated now to understand that if they incorporate somebody in their economic union, they need to capture them for forever, and make them obliged to be oriented only buying Russian goods, Russian cars or Russian food or anything, you know. But when somebody changes mind in those countries like Kazakhstan or Belarus or Armenia or somewhere, they can punish them immediately, that cutting the supply of oil products or stopping buying the goods from Kyrgyzstan, for instance, punishing for this. That, oh, you want to go out? Now you'll face the outcomes from your stupid behavior. You know, this is how they treat the partners. You know, for them, partner is not really partner. Obey and shut up. This is the partner. You know, and that's why I'm saying that for us, this is not a choice. Georgians understanding this, I mean, strategic reality or not, they are really tired with Russian behavior, you know. It's not us who invented this everything, you know. My friends, Russians, are saying that we can understand everything, okay. This was the empire, Tsar, etc. But how can you explain anyway that when Russia annexed Georgia in the beginning of 19th century, they destroyed the frescoes in Georgian churches, directly painting frescoes of 300, 500, 800 years old, 800 years old frescoes on the walls of Georgian churches. How can you explain this? Then telling Georgians that, oh, no, they are very good. They are very good. This was a mistake. Okay, how many mistakes, you know? And then, okay, mistakes, we believe, we forgive, we forget. Okay, but now you are again trying to cheat us every day, every moment, every second. You want to cheat us and you want to make us obeying and shut up, nothing else. And it's not for us. That's all. You know, what's wrong here? And when the Westerners cannot understand this, I'm telling them the same thing, that these people are not trustful and they don't respect individuals, humans. So, full stop. If they start fulfilling the treaties, if they start fulfilling the agreements, like one we had about taking away Russian troops from Georgian territory after the war, if they show us that they respect individuals, humans, then what's wrong with them? Nothing wrong. We need this, exactly this, nothing else. And Georgians would be also happy to have relationship with them. But now, after our war, they went to Ukraine, and who is next? No? And okay, now we said no. We opened the doors to you. We have trade with you. Okay, but other things, forget. We don't need any deeper relationship. You know, we are weaker or stronger or stupid mistakes, or we are maybe stubborn. We are maybe not so civilized. The Russians always claim that Caucasus nations, these are not civilized nations. they are the one tribe of stupid guys. You know, they even call us nationalities of Caucasus origin. This is how they call us. You know, is the country which is claiming that we were producing wine 8,000 years. We are the nationality of Caucasus origin. This is not Georgian, but this is the nationality of Caucasus origin. Okay, they want to insult every day what they talk about in their TVs every day. And they want us to believe that they are the friends. No, they are not the friends. They don't really want us to believe they are the friends. They want to say that we are the masters. You are the sphere and the territory of our influence, and we don't care who lives there. We don't care who is against whom. We don't care about Ossi people. We don't care about Abkhaz people. We care about the spheres of influence. That's all. And when some people are trying to criticize some Western nations like US, that they have also some strategic visions about, etc. And I'm always saying that, tell me any example when USA, for instance, was behaving aggressively against the neighbors, bombing, invading, occupying, etc. No, there is no evidence. Okay, then there's a clear difference, you know. That's a clear difference.
Gia, let me ask you about the currency, about the Georgian lari. Why have you never established a currency board to connect the Georgian lari to the euro, similar like Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia?
Yeah, thank you. This is a good question because I was lobbying this myself. I even translated the book of Steve Henke about the currency boards, who was advising Lithuanians, Estonians, Bulgarians, Bosnians, who counts. So Steve Henke came to Georgia twice, and I'm very friendly to him. When I go to the US, I'm always visiting him in Baltimore, and I am happy to know such great people like Steve Henke. But it did not go forward. You know, we even Saakashvili government, they were hesitating, etc. Because no, when you have business with the International Monetary Fund, they tell you that either you take this way or this way. Or this way means that you are very disciplined. You have currency board, no deficits, no public debt, and everything is in the very strict fiscal discipline. No, or maybe you don't need this because sometimes you need deficit or the inflation, because sometimes you need to have immediate expenditures, etc. So for that reason, we say that, let's say, flexible currency system is better, and if you are failing, we are here to help you if you are failing. So it's a clear choice, you know. And when they did this in Bulgaria and other places, they knew very well what they were doing. They knew that with this kind of attempt, they will be cut from some sources from the International Monetary Fund. Because if you do this, then you did not need their money, you know, etc., etc. So, and all the experience shows us how good it is and how well it works. But when it comes to decision, then many people are talking about our prestige, that we can have our currency, and I'm saying, oh, you have your prestige, but Austrians or Germans or Italians or French, they don't have prestige. Spanish, they don't have their prestige. They are stupid. They are. Which of these nations, I'm always asking, is the younger than us, and which of this nation is less developed, or etc. they are much better and they have much better history, etc., etc. Greeks or Italians or others. And then forget about this stupid argument. This is technical thing. Money is not any political or prestige or any kind of this type of thing. This is technical unit. And if it is not politicized, and if it is not under permanent shake, then it's helping the business very, very much. And the second thing is, obviously, this is the second thing, that if we fix our lari to euro, then the business and trade with the European Union will be much easier than now. Much easier. And maybe from the beginning prices will be jumping up, but it must jump, because you cannot keep your economy that your prices are much lower than in developed countries. It's not Soviet Union. This is open country. And that means that lari is a very bad thing for us. And if you ask me, like Montenegro, we needed to move to euro directly without any kind of hesitation and talking about that we keep our currency and beautiful portraits of Georgian poets on the paper, etc. But no, neither Saakashvili, because Kaha was lobbying the currency board himself, he also paid his money for the visit of Steve Hanke to Georgia. And we translated together his book and etc. But he published the book, Kaha published the book of Steve Hanke. But when it comes to the realities of life, then I think Saakashvili understood this situation as that if we followed the currency board, there could be some problems from the international donors. And he was hesitating about this. I know because Martlar was his advisor. After I invited Martlar, he was coming here for next 5 or 6 years. And by the way, it's not known to the public, but when Mart was coming, he was always calling me first and to get advice, what to talk to the government. And Mart himself was the author of currency board in Estonia. And of course, he was lobbying this himself also. He was saying, what for you need this Georgian lari at all? But unfortunately, it did not work. After 2012, we had one guy, and he was even the prime minister, as the economic minister. I met once officially because I knew him before. And he said, let's move to euro directly. And I said, okay, we can bring best experts and we can do this in 1 month. But he never continued this. Then he became the prime minister. And sometimes this is tricky that you are the prime minister and all these things are under yourself. You are controlling everything. And he, I think, thought that now I'm in control of the monetary system and the money supply. And if I move to euro, then I will not have such a power anymore. This is very tricky thing, corruptive thing, because when you think that, it's now under my control, you must be Martlar, not that guy, but Martlar, to say that, no, I don't need this. It's better that everything is improving with this currency board or euro, and everybody say that, such a great prime minister, he did this reform, rather than trying to control and manipulate this monetary system and doing such a huge harm to the economy. and the harm is really very huge. And unfortunately, these international institutions also doing such a harm that they are not openly discussing the economic problems in Georgia. Even worse, that they are hiding real problems. Because if you look at the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank data, so if Georgian economy was 16 billions at the last year of Saakashvili in 2013, he was still the president. Then now it is still 16 billion. And through these 8 years, they were saying every year that, oh, there is a real growth of 4%, but you need 4.5. But now we are asking, where is this growth? As the GDP was 16 billion, now it is still 16 billion. And the difference between the PPP and the nominal calculation, if it was like 30 to 40% difference, now it's 3 times more. This means 200%, And these institutions like Monetary Fund, International Monetary Fund, and others, they are observing this situation, and they are saying that there is something wrong here, instead of openly talking about, because they don't need irritation of the government. They need this government or that government or any government to support their presence here and support their projects here. Because if all the nations behave correctly, then what for we need the IMF at all? This is the reality. So if you do something wrong, they can tell you that if it is extra wrong, they will tell you that no, this is wrong. They are telling this government also, this current government in Georgia, they would some extra wrong things, but not all the things. And one of the things is why Georgian lari stabilized with the Russian ruble and destabilized and declined very much to euro and the US dollar. Why they are not alarming with this? We should take our neighbors. Armenian dram is much better than Georgian lari, and they have no correlation with Russian ruble that much as Georgian, but their economy is much more tied with Russian economy. Armenian economy with Russian economy is nonsense. But their currency is not really that much tied with Russian ruble. Why Georgian currency is so much stabilized with Russian? That's a question, And I'm talking to different European offices here. There is something wrong here, and we need to change something, That's another situation here, and there are many things I wrote about why Russian market is not correct orientation for Georgia. Some 7 years ago, it was even translated into Russian. Somebody translated and deleted from the website. Also, I was not enough efficient to copy that article in Russian, because there is English article which is saying that
Gia,
how can you compare Russian market with this?
Gia, let me ask. Since 2018, when the parliamentarian Mr. Gavrilov, he came to Georgia during this meeting of the International Orthodox Parliamentarian Union, there's a deep crisis in politics in Georgia. And it's going on up to this moment, as I understand, also with the whole effect of the...
It was 2019, not 18, but 19.
Okay, so it's now 1.5 years. And
yeah, it was I think, mostly big mistake. I don't think that anybody was that much happy to have Gavrilo in there. But on the other hand, this entire thing, like, can you imagine that Catholic nations, they have their parliamentary union or something, and they are gathering somewhere and discussing something inside of Catholic community. nonsense, and also another thing, that who is paying money there? Russia is paying, of course. No other country would be happy to pay money for this kind of gatherings, etc. And I don't know who invented this. First of all, I'm not that much Orthodox than many Georgians are, because Orthodox for them, in Georgian and Russian, this is not Orthodox. This is different name. But I'm not that much religious, to confess. I believe to 10 commandments very strongly following them. But on the other hand, I'm not going to church every day or something, every week or something. But this parliamentary union is, I think, politically dead something. Somebody needs to make it alive artificially. Something like these people have something in common, and they need to discuss what to discuss with them. I don't know what to discuss with them. With all these nations, we have a very good relationship. No problem with anybody. Very big problem with Russia. Can this union solve any problem with Russia? No, nonsense, impossible. Then what for you are gathering with this kind of big gathering? You can meet anybody in this community uh, alone without any witnesses or etc. etc. But this is one thing. But of course, this was a very provocative thing to see this guy, who also is by Georgian laws, he's a criminal because he violated occupation law in Georgia. We have occupation law, which is saying that going to Abkhazia without permission of Tbilisi government, Georgian government, is prohibited. So he visited Abkhazia without any permission, but also he is supposed to be fighting also on the side of Abkhaz separatists some 20 years ago. And many other things, and you can imagine what party he was representing there. Do you know which party Gavrilo is from? Communist Party. He is a communist Orthodox, somebody stupid guy, who does not care about neither Orthodoxy or the Christianity, nor of the communism, nothing. He's a kind of aggressor, Russian aggressor, who wants to grab everything, and that's all. And his appearance there was to show that we Russians are here already. That's why everybody were alarmed with this. And then when everybody went to streets, government made such a huge stupidity to attack these guys. And until now, there are tensions between the opposition and the government because of this event. And then also last year elections, no opposition party accepted the results of the elections of October 2020. And now we have a kind of a political crisis. The Jean-Michel even came to Tbilisi to help to solve the problem. Then he sent Mr. Danielson as a kind of negotiator between the two sides. But yesterday he left Georgia without any agreement. So the opposition is demanding the new elections this year and freeing of the political prisoners. But the government says that there are no political prisoners, they are criminals arrested. Who is arrested? One of them, there are two people. One of them is the leader of the biggest opposition party, or former Saakashvili's party. He is arrested because of the events during the Gavrilov's visit. He was the member of the parliament, and he was not allowed to go inside of the parliament to protest. Then when the people started gathering in front of the parliament, he also joined them, and he said that let's go in. because they don't listen to us. Then somebody from the government offered them to even negotiate, but then the government forces attacked the people manifesting at the parliament, and there was many people injured, etc., etc. But now it's about only one thing, that who is ruling the country. So in reality, Ivanishvili has no official power at all. He was the prime minister, then he resigned, but continued ruling the government unofficially. Then somebody told him that it's not correct, and he returned back to politics and leaded this Georgian Dream Party. And some people again told him that this is looking like Soviet Union when Communist Party was ruling the country, but the Communist Party leader, the de facto leader, had no official position in the government. So he was ruling the party, not the government, and many people were telling him maybe that it's not correct. So after the elections, he said that, I quit the politics. I will never interfere in the politics anymore. But I think everybody understands that he never did this. He, in reality, continues ruling the government. And not because only that you can feel this, but also that many members of the cabinet, they are the close allies to him. Like the Minister of Healthcare, she's the former dentist of Ivanishvili. Can you imagine? Minister of Interior, the police minister, he's the former guard of Ivanishvili. And if you dig, everybody are this type of guys, who was his servant in the past. And the parliament is nonsense, because they are not together because they are the experts of politics or even policy. They are the people who were supported by Ivanishvili. Everybody knows this. Not only in opposition they talk this, but in the government they know that they are there because Ivanishvili supported them, not because that really people elected them, but because they were in the team of Ivanishvili. And also, strangely, but they still accuse Saakashvili in crimes, although there is no visibility that anybody in the world believes in that. But Saakashvili is not anymore Georgian citizen, and he cannot take part in the Georgian elections now. But they are so much afraid of Saakashvili that they are still talking about that how Saakashvili is bad, he is bad. If he returns, he will be punishing more people, etc. And some people are still afraid of returning of Saakashvili because he was known as a very harsh person, and some people even saying that he has blood on his hands, etc. Because there were many people unsatisfied as I was counting. I counted many policemen or Minister of Defense or criminals and many others who could be really unhappy with Saakashvili's reforms or the Saakashvili's way of governance. But also it touched many businesses, and the rule was like, now we have less taxes, go and pay. And I don't say anything was ideal. I don't say anything was even close to ideal. It was not. And I think that there were huge mistakes done because of that. They thought that everything was going smoothly, but the people you trust somewhere in their offices, they can be doing some wrong things because of such a harsh policy you have. That you have policy that lets punish everybody who is violating the law. And the Minister of Justice of Saakashvili time, I knew him very well because we were the colleagues at the parliament when I was the parliament officer. He told me once that, Georgians abandoned the style of life that they obeyed laws. During the Tsar period of Russian Empire and then Soviet Union, everybody thought this is not our law. So, and nobody had, not nobody, but most of the people would never live according to the laws. So now we clean the laws, we deregulated, we cut taxes, and we have fewer laws. So they need to obey. They need to study living this way. And he said that maybe we remove such harsh way of management after a while, when we see that everybody are happy to live according to law. But this is a kind of theoretical thing. I was telling to him that no, if you implement this type of harsh approach to laws, that you attack and punish everybody who are disobeying the laws without further liberalization, then you'll be unable to control what the people are doing in the name of you. They will be saying that we are punishing you because we have an order from above, from the great leaders, that we need to punish everybody who is maybe imprisoning anybody who is not paying enough taxes or etc. No? I think this was the mistake not to follow this situation.
Let me ask you, we are now in the COVID crisis, in Corona crisis. It's also a big economic crisis, no doubt. Additionally, Georgia is in a political crisis. Additionally, now we have new American president and he will have a tougher line towards Putin. So now my question is, what do you think that that the EU, the European Union and NATO should do and give to Georgia in order to help you in this deep crisis?
First of all, I think what we need here is to return back to our path to the reforms, because we need to believe that we can do that. We don't need any kind of teachers to tell us, oh, it's correct. We need to understand which lesson to take, which not, etc., etc. But so anything which is violating this rule is making more harm than the benefit to us. But what is most important, I think, is to make situation more dependent on institutions here. That if we follow current situation, the people are like Ivanishvili or Saakashvili, they are deciding more things than the institutions. And things like judiciary improvement or even executive improvement, because we destroyed our constitution and now this constitution does not work. It works only if there is a great leader behind who is manipulating the situation, and it works that way, not correct way, but that way. So I think the best thing is to go towards the checks and balances, towards the more decentralization and cleaning the judiciary and making it really out of politics. And also, one of the first things, I am absolutely sure, one of the first things is to implement currency board or adopt euro immediately. Because it brings discipline to any sector directly. Because if we have discipline in this field, then discipline spreads over in other fields. For instance, if government thinks that they can inflate and they can support some populist projects and programs, it will be impossible with the currency board. Almost impossible, let's say, because they can, of course, have enough revenues for more things. But I think that the international community is not really ready to push this way to Georgia. I mean, the Jean-Michel came here with one of these things, that you must continue reforms in the judiciary. But what that means, that's the case. It's not that easy to say what that means and how to improve. Up to now, we see that it's not really going somewhere. And for economic direction, I think that many things are dependent on one important direction: how quickly and strongly our judges can believe that the economy is not coming from the government but from the business. And if you are not neutral, at least between the government and the business, then the economy cannot continue. Investors will not come. They need to understand that all the wealth is made by business. It does not mean institution, but the people working in the business, but people who are entrepreneurs, etc. With the same thing like pandemic, I wrote the piece with the For Liberty network. I can send it. I was saying that believing in that now governments can solve the problem of the economy is not understanding what the business means. Business means that if I'm a business and entrepreneur sitting here now and thinking that what to do, it's not like I'm waiting when government tells me what to do. It's opposite to this. He's sitting and thinking that how to make money tomorrow. That's what I'm thinking, And then sitting and thinking, how can I do? Now I need to answer to the demands from the people. Then that means that I need to find out what is a demand for coming from the people now exactly. And then I go find out and think that do I have money? No, but I go to the bank. There is no problem. There is a bank. They have enough liquidity to give me money. But what is the opposite to this? Maybe I wait until government gives me money and I will start to work. But instead, maybe government needs to reduce taxes and make regulations lighter and give chances to the entrepreneurs to start again, reset, and go again forward. Because these are the people who never hesitate. They always think that they need to do something. That's the solution. And unfortunately, Georgian government in pandemic situation was behaving maybe worse direction. That they were giving money to construction business, to that business. Almost everybody are unhappy, etc. But the economy is not growing. and everything goes back. We had 11% minus in January, you know? And then, and I said that any kind of uh, uh, support to business, this means that you never satisfy everybody, and this money will not be working, because this is free money falling from the sky, and nobody makes money with such nobody makes business with such money. But also that everybody will be blaming, oh, they gave more money to those bad guys, and instead of giving money to us good guys. And I said that if you cut taxes, this is for everybody. Everybody immediately understands that this is good for everybody, and less obligations, less problems. Because if you want to restart now and you think, what kind of problems I will have, and one of them comes immediately. If I restart, I will have obligations immediately to pay taxes. So, and if somebody tells them, no, no, don't worry, your tax will be half of what you are expecting. Then I say, oh, then the other half with me will remain with me, so I will go and try to do something, you know. And if you don't tell them this, then of course this is kind of threat for the government. They can think that, oh, with this, we so there will be no chance, or they will be blaming us. Of course, the opposition, media, everybody will be blaming you that, oh, you were not that good government to understand what the business needed, and instead of supporting the business, you just cut taxes and it did not help. It will help. They don't understand simply that we have 800,000 companies in Georgia registered. Maybe approximately half of them are active. So all of them are thinking now what to do. They just don't understand entrepreneurship, you know. They think that these entrepreneurs work because somebody told them that they need to work. No, no, they are entrepreneurs. That's why they work. They are omitting in this situation. You know Dan Mitchell, yeah? Dan Mitchell told me that, no, no, it's not a solution to pandemic, but it's a solution every day. Because if you cut taxes, it will work, of course. And you know, if you looked in my article about taxes in Georgia, I invented such a graph which is showing that if the tax burden is 10%, then where this 90% goes to the business, of course. It is employing more people, it is employing more resources, it is producing more goods. So let's have 20% of tax burden. Then it is obvious that 10% was taken from the business and given to the government, not productive, from productive people to not productive people. Okay, let's move forward. We have 30% of taxes and 70% remains with. It means that they are employing less people, less resources are bought, less products were produced, etc. So if you make the taxes less, then that means more money remains with the businesses, and that means that they have more chances to expand, to employ more people, to make more products, etc. This is so easy. You know, I invented this 20 years ago when we drafted the tax code for Shevardnadze government. We were thinking how stupid these guys are. You know, they don't understand such an easy thing that if you take more money, that means that they can work less. Just that simply. That if you take more money from business, that means that they can employ less people and produce less goods. That's easy, you know.
Absolutely.
And yet you can find some kind of golden rule in here, but
Gia, let
now
me ask you,
the golden rule is to reduce.
you mentioned already Montenegro, and we have also
Yes.
with North Macedonia is now NATO member, and the countries
Yes.
are moving quite well towards European Union. So my question is also, is it possible for Georgia to work closer together with the countries from the Balkans to join the Central European Free Trade Agreement and also the institutions like Regional Cooperation Council in order to have a bigger market also and to move closer towards the European Union?
Yeah, I think that this is a good idea. Only thing is that it does not depend on me. You are always lobbying this, and you must know that I'm absolutely perfect with this. But nothing depends on me. And with the thing with NATO also, I was told that our military budget now is less than 10 years ago. So how can we achieve NATO with this kind of move? And some people are trying to justify this, that if you increase our budget, military budget, then Russia is irritated. Okay, this is the reality of life. As I said, we are not that easy with the neighbors. North Macedonia, okay, they had some dispute with Greece about the name. If they had different name, I think Greece would be happy to accept them quicker. But Georgia has much different situation, much different. First of all, recently when uh, Armenia, the Azerbaijan wars was finished, my Azeri friend wrote in the LinkedIn that now we should have free trade in Southern Caucasus. And I said, and free movement of people also. You can imagine in our small region, there are three nations, and two of them, they don't have diplomatic relationship, no trade, no movement, nothing. And only Georgia has good relationship with each other. And we are kind of friendly, very friendly to them. But these are our immediate neighbors. And you can imagine that Turkey is the best neighbor in reality, because Turkey never hesitated to support Georgia's independence, and our trade or our economic relationship is great. I even wrote an article about it. When we need to negotiate a lot with different people like Europeans or others, we should have free trade. We had free trade with Turkey already 25 years ago. And Turks don't need passport to come to Georgia, and we don't need passport to go to Turkey. And nobody was telling them, "Oh, you should do that. You should." No, just they decided that what for me. They don't have this type of relationship with Azerbaijan even, but we have. So we are open and free country, but it does not help in this situation, because the situation is very tense. Our north neighbor is aggressive, hooliganic, What for they need South Ossetia? Okay, maybe Abkhazia they need, because they want to go for swimming or something there. Because Russia has no real good places to go to the sea. But, okay, South Ossetia, 5,000 people living there, 10,000 troops. What for they need South Ossetia? It just, they are looking for hegemony and teaching everybody what is their correct way of life, and they need to teach us what is ethical, what is not, etc., etc. But we say, just leave us alone, please, leave us alone. We don't need anything from you. But they don't want to leave us alone. But with this neighborhood, it's very tough. Europeans, Americans, or others, they need to understand how tough is the situation here. It's not for instance, some Americans who want to isolate USA from anything. And some of them are talking this type of languages. We are not the global police, etc. No, they say that why it is our business to help Georgia. And I'm very tough about this. I'm saying that we are like a buffer zone between you and Russia. And we are taking a lot of costs on us. When you live there freely and peacefully in the USA, you must know that there are Ukrainian, Georgians, and others who are suffering because of aggressive neighbor. And we are taking the costs and the front line, and it's not like it's free. You are the richest nation, and you want to live at the expense of very poor Georgians. It's shameful, and talking rumor type of things about they don't know anything about South Ossetia, but of course Georgia will conquer South Ossetia, but you don't know anything about this. Why you are talking about this? But they want to uh, listen to, and I said also that the thing that you hate your government does not mean that Russian government is better. This is what they think. And I said, okay, show us any evidence that USA was invading their neighbors. Of course they were making lots of mistakes in Vietnam or other places, but on the other hand, who was fighting on the other side of Vietnam? It's also known to us, not only in Vietnam. I can count many countries where Russians were killed, in Syria, in Angola, in other places, what they were doing there.
Yeah, tell me one thing for the future. What is the most important economic policy project that you think is very important for Georgia right now?
As I said, this is currency board or implementing, using euro directly. And Georgians tend to respect US dollar more than euro. I don't know why. But in reality, absolutely more practical is to introduce euro here. But there are, of course, as I said, um, it's not absolutely economic thing, but very much connected with the economy. This is improvement of our judiciary in the direction of economic uh, trials, because they are not really best knowledgeable in economic things, our judges. But I think that there are some more things, as you said, we need more partners. And if I was, for instance, who asks me, but if I was asked by anybody from even this government, I have my opinion what to do to have more free trade agreements, but also to use this free trade agreement with the European Union better than now it is used. For instance, we have office of Georgia at the NATO in Brussels, but we don't have office of Georgia at the European Union headquarters.
No?
We have Georgian embassy, which is covering both our Georgian-Belgian relationship, but also the European Union relationship, which is impossible to do with 10 people. And I said, if we are really dedicated and we want to be closer to European Union, we need to work hard and have bigger representation and work every day, every minute to knock every door, to understand how they work, how to fulfill all the important things to make closer our ways of behavior, etc., etc. But if you don't do that, then okay, they can push you, but how long they can push you? This is the how long they. Only thing what is encouraging is that everybody since 2014 are paying more and more attention to what is happening here. It's not really helping. this is another thing that we need to use what we have already. This is free trade agreements with many countries, and also make it easier, this relationship. As I said, one of the steps is to introduce euro, for instance, or to have a currency board fixed with the euro. This number one, because it really changes many things.
There's huge impact, no doubt. Gia, let me also ask you, when you look now, very soon will be the 30 years anniversary of Georgian independence. That will be in this year, I understand, yeah? So that's a very important date. And also my question is now, for 40 years, that will be in 2031. Do you think that the Republic of Georgia will be in NATO, will have the euro as the currency, and will be in the European Union already by 2031?
It's hard to say, because 40 years is like a biblical 40 years, you know. When we started our movement for independence 32 years ago, yeah. And there was my neighbor who was more experienced. He said that we need 40 years to become really independent and free. And he said, you know why? Because Moses took the Israel people from Egypt, and it lasted like 40 years of walking in the desert, and maybe we need the same. So I say maybe 40 years that time was like 60 years now, because life expectancy was different, etc. But now another thing is that now this is a different world. Information is spreading much quicker, and good experience is always easy to see, etc. So with all things, one thing is encouraging, that Georgians would never accept losing independence again. And Georgians are entrepreneurship-oriented people, and they are free people. Nobody likes to be a slave of anybody. And but on the other hand, we need to change this world very much to see that our neighbors are better. For instance, I was always saying that we would be happy, for instance, to have free access to Iran, because it's a big nation, oldest nation, etc. We'd be happy to travel there, etc. To have more business. Now, if you omit that we have our visions, we know what are the visions of our partners, and we are limited with this very much. And it's not that I'm complaining, but it's limited. And you can imagine that there is such a region where everything is limited. How can we progress? Only thing you can do is, as I'm teaching young people also, that there are something you can do, there are something you cannot do. For instance, you cannot change the climate. You cannot move your country from this region and put it in the center of Europe. But there are something you can do, like introducing euro, which is like introducing Europe here immediately. And also something you can cut taxes. You can also eliminate some of the taxes. Like, I'm against of the corporation tax at all. I'm saying that this is stupid to tax corporation when this money does not belong to that corporation. If it is already announced as a profit, it belongs to the shareholders already, not the company. While you are taxing the person which is not the owner of that money. So I would eliminate the corporation tax at all in Georgia without any hesitation, because it will invite so many investments here and make it easy, because you don't need then many different tax obligations will be gone with this. There will be no obligation to have balance sheet, etc. There are many things, but I would eliminate the customs taxes at all, because we don't understand what for we have them. Some people thought that it could help our agriculture, for instance, against our immediate neighbors. But go to Georgian supermarkets, they are trading Armenian vegetables everywhere. And these barriers never helped against Armenian vegetables or anything else. So we could economize a lot if we had zero customs taxes on everything. But there are some more things. I would also move back to the completely private healthcare system, because after Saakashvili, they invented the public, not insurance, but public supported healthcare system. The institutions are still private, but the funding is coming from the government. So which brought us too many stupidities, too many wrong doing of the healthcare business, and too much waste of the resources. And there are now queues in the clinics and etc. and etc. This created a huge problem. Now, if one reform, this is one you must do here. And also they invented the savings-based pensions you liked in Kosovo, but I will be a kind of expert on the constitutional court trial next month against this system, because it made some of our best achievements go backwards. Like because of this, they invented a tax. They call this is the fee, not the tax, but in reality, it's a tax for employers to pay for the pensions of their employees. And there are some other things. And as we say, if it was private pension system, it would be okay, still okay, despite of the fact that in many places private but mandatory pensions are not really flourishing, and there are problems. But what we have here, this is the state mandatory savings pensions, which are not really to solve any problems, but they invented the tax for this, avoided this economic freedom law, and saying that this is not a tax. So if I was asked what to do, I would immediately eliminate this. Because as you know, Jose Pinera, who invented this pension system in Chile, once he said that Georgia had better pension system, because it was a flat, despite of who contributed how much. But the major thing was that government did not have any kind of obligation, no liability. Government had only public debt, and that's all. Now we are accumulating this pension money, which will fail, obviously, and it will be added to the public debt. It will fail because in any country there is a problem of aging. Yeah, in Georgia with this nonsense economy. We have aging problem here as well. My father died in December. He was 86 years old. And you can say, of course, this is a joke, but Georgians live not according to their economic abilities, And that means that from this starting point, you are just growing the problem, not stopping it. So, and we think that the most serious answer to all problems is to have double-digit growth. And achieving this double-digit growth back after 15 years from 2016 must be the major task for any decision maker. Without this, Kaha Bendukidze was very easy to explain these kind of things. And he said that to one of the politicians, how do you think, how quickly we can reach the European level? Oh, maybe in 10 years, he said. You know some arithmetics or not? How can you achieve European level with now 10 times smaller economy per capita? And he said that if we grow 5% and we reach them in 60 years. If we grow 7%, we will reach European level at that time after 35 years. If we grow double digit, we can reach European level maybe in 20 years, in visible time, And I created a kind of matrix to show when they are talking about this. I'm only showing that, look, if you grow 2% like average European Union, and of course they have 600 or 700 euros growth per year per capita, and we have 60 or 70. How can we reach this with this speed, And these are like tasks in our arithmetic lessons during the school age. And I said, okay, if you have double digit, then we can reach them in 30 years, okay, but if not, then you cannot reach them in 30 years. And for most of the people, this is kind of, oh, impossible. Maybe you calculate wrongly. No, I'm not calculating this. Calculator is calculating this way. I'm not calculating in my mind. I calculated with my computer Excel file. I put the numbers and it shows me this way. So this is what they need to understand, that if you think that 5% is okay, maybe you think this 5% is okay, but what the people think is that 5% maybe is 10% for somebody, but for me this is 0%. So achieving double digit this means that everybody are growing, Not some people are growing, but everybody are growing. Some people 20%, some people 5%. But if you have 5%, that means that some people grow 10%, and others 0%. This is the reality, And then I said that, can you imagine having 5%? You are almost the same after 5 years. So this is a source of instability and the problems in your country, that nobody believes that anything is moving forward. So this is not economic problem anymore. This is political problem, that nobody believes that you are doing anything. You can say, somebody can tell you from the IMF or the World Bank, oh, so great, you have 5%. Because they think that after European Union 0% growth, 5% is good. But you need to think about it, 5% in 5 years gives you nothing, almost nothing. So people want to see, whoa, what you achieve. Tell me. I want to see in my pocket or in my bank account. the growth, but not with your GDP per capita figures, you know. And if you have double digit for 5 years, 10 years, everybody are happy and everybody are looking forward. They don't want to run away to Europe or the US, but they think that it's better to stay. You look at China, for instance, and I would encourage you to read the uh, poverty in China. There is such a Wikipedia article. You know how many people live in China in poverty now? 3%. 3%. 20 years ago, China was poorer than Georgia. Now, or 30 years ago, okay. Now they are far ahead. With this communist government, they will be going back now, I'm absolutely sure. But anyway, they have big market. They have about, I think, 100 or 200 million high-level workers there, and everybody want to invest there because their productivity is higher, etc. And 700 million people moved from the countryside to live in the cities now in China after 20, 30 years of reforms. And some people think that, oh no, it's China, in Georgia, this is different. Of course, different. You are smaller, poorer, etc., etc. And to reach even China, you need to work as hard as they work. And mythology about that, we have the cheaper workforce, etc., are not really working. This is the mythology. Poor uh, quality of work and discipline. This is the biggest problem in Georgia. The businesses are talking directly this, that if you want to hire one person, you need to check 200 people because it's so uneasy to find qualified people who are looking for a job. They are all employed. But when it comes to invite here investments, they can come and say, oh, so beautiful mountains, so beautiful lakes or etc., flowers, but very lazy workers, so I go to Turkey. This is the reality, no? And also the improvement of the education system, you know, nothing is moving forward. We don't see any improvement, and there are very few places you can say that you can study something. And in this type of things, we need some kind of consensus between the different political parties that, like in Estonia, they are so pragmatic people that when they think that this is correct way, there is no big discussion. They do this, and that's all. We need that type of thing also here. Introducing euro or currency board. Why? Because it stabilizes your economy immediately. Not like after 2 years, but immediately after 1 week, you see that it's everything is calculable. You can calculate your business very easily, etc. And investors also look at you that, oh, as they understood that they need euro, then maybe they have good policy in other sectors also. But if what they observe is that you have stupid policy with your currency and the monetary system and the banking, so they think that everything is bad in this country. Because what is visible, they cannot hide this here. They are not trying even to hide this problem. This is open that Georgian lari is depreciating every day. So that means that nobody cares what happens with business, with investments, with the economy. So why should I come and invest? But when you introduce euro, they can say that this is maybe first step, but this is already so strong step that maybe they are already having very good ideas and they will go forward with reforming other things also that perfect way. That's why introducing currency board or the euro is the key problem. In Georgia, in Ukraine, I believe Ukraine must be doing the same, absolutely. What for they are doing this kind of artificial stabilization of the hryvnia. I don't understand what for they need this. But these are the thoughts what I can tell you immediately, because
a very powerful vision you have, Gia. I would like to say that this kind of double-digit growth based on the firm fundament of the euro, also bringing Georgia towards the European Union, secured by NATO. I think that's a wonderful vision for the next decade. And I hope we will be strong and healthy and also achieve it together.
Yeah, one thing which is external, this is I'm absolutely sure that if we even have the best government, without uh, Western countries to understand that without their involvement, this cannot be solved. No, they must understand what kind of situation is here. I cannot even talk loudly what I feel, because it's too dangerous. You can see my Twitter. I never write about our neighbors except Russians, because it's already our enemy. It's occupied our regions. But I never write any negative things about our neighbors. I'm always writing positive things. So there are problems, and somebody needs to understand why these problems are happening here. Because of this country is located for many reasons, strategically to understand that losing Georgia means losing entire region. Communists, Stalin, such kind of guys, they understood this type of things very well. Russians understand. But if we need Georgia really as a partner, we must be involved in helping every day. And if we are weak and if we are uh, not so active, then you must come and push, because you understand better what can happen here than we understand, or then we have chances to shake anything and change anything. Our capacities to change the situation are very limited, very limited. It must be understood very well that we are very limited in our abilities. You know, sometimes people were asking why we never try to negotiate peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan. We are very limited with this. We are not siding anybody here, but also we want to show them that for us, free trade, free movement, these kind of things are more important than any quarreling about something, etc. This is our policy. I think that beginning with Shevardnadze until now, we were correct. But how long we can last with these weak capacities to oppose such a huge challenges? We are under really huge challenges. Now, you know, they invented the Six Nations region thing, and Georgians, including the government, um, understood as a kind of alarm signal, because if we are not having enough attention, then we will be pushed from different sides, and we will be step by step um, isolated from Europe. This must be understood very well. Jean Michel came, I think, with this type of signal here that
Do you see a chance for a European consensus now to really form a platform for membership in Georgia between the opposition and the government, and also to convince the European partners that you can be a EU member, and this kind of powerful vision to unite the political scene of Georgia in order to come together to make some kind of a common platform again after this confrontation and really convince the European partners you are
no,
a European soldier?
what I think about inside, I think that there is enough consensus that we need to move forward that direction. Only thing is that if we have enough capacities to oppose to anti-European forces, and these are not internal, mostly external. But on the side of European Union, I think that there is such a thing like what for we need Georgia feeling. Maybe among Spanish, maybe among Irish, maybe among Portuguese. They can think that why it is our problem, why we need Georgia there, etc. Because they don't feel what we can bring to them. As well as like you can guess there are problems between, for instance, Vietnam and China. But does anybody care about this? We think that this is not our business. They have their business there. That can be also such kind of isolation type of feeling among some Westerners who live far away from our region, and they can think that if we benefit with the relationship with Russia more than uh, trouble, have troubles or costs, and the costs are bigger if we support Georgia, then what for we need Georgia? This is, and I think that this is wrong approach for one reason. That if they thought that way, there will be no European Union. I think that European Union is not like uh, if we accept, okay, if not, forget. This is about that if we have the same type of visions about life, same type of vision about individuals, humans, and same type of values, then why not to be together? This is what I understand with the European Union.
Yes.
And if they think that, oh, it's Georgia, it's far away, who cares about this? Why should we have Georgia in our club? Then they don't understand what is this club for. That's what I feel myself, you know. And with this vision, they will do lots of mistakes. Like uh, I'm very critical about not only about Russia's role in the European Union, especially in Germany or Austria, for instance, but also about Chinese role in the entire European Union or Balkans or the other places. Chinese are smart enough, let's say, wrong type of smartness, that they need to come with their money and offers when they see that there is a weakness somewhere. And Italians or Macedonians or others who could have some economic problems, their governments can be open to Chinese investments without uh, understanding what are the threats after these investments, you know. And I think there are threats with this. And the Chinese communists understand very well what they are doing. They don't care about the real global uh, economic projects or the economic things, but they think that they need to involve, they need to be presented, they need to um, invest here or there because it increases their influence, political, economic, or other types of influence. That's that's a typical behavior of the communists. That's why I'm always writing that don't trust communists. I'm not against Chinese at all because I have relatives who are Chinese, and there are very good Chinese places like Singapore or Macau or Hong Kong or Taiwan, and I cannot be different than respecting Chinese people, but I cannot trust communists because they have only one thing in their minds: how to conquer everything and influence everywhere and find new places they can uh, push their interests forward. Not like normal behavior that let's open countries, let's have trade, let's have more business to each other. And why this is Chinese government doing this everything, not Chinese businesses doing this is another thing, you know. That's why I would say the current situation in the European Union is directing attention from the major values towards how to survive in this situation, which pandemia made it maybe even worse. But for us, again, there is no such a thing to decide. When we say that we want to be in the NATO, we say that if we are in the NATO, we say and we send a clear signal to everybody. We are there, so forget about us. So any types of your efforts to return us back to somewhere is already gone. We are there. That's another thing. And NATO is the most disciplined institution, and it can help us with many things also. But we need to have very transparent rules, very institution-based behavior that NATO or European Union to understand that this is not a nation where one person's the greatest person decides everything and we can have business with him. But they want to know that our institutions work perfectly. And if there is somebody crazy guy in the Ministry of Defense with lots of powerful equipment, he is controlled by the legislation, and institutions are behaving like they must behave. That's why I'm talking about we need institutions to work better in Georgia.
I think your capacity is very strong because this is the longest interview I've ever made. You managed to be so
You have
strong
questions.
that you have, I know, 3 hours 15. So, Gia, one thing is for sure. If every Georgian has similar capacities like you're a very strong nation.
Yeah, some people are telling us about this, but our environment is too problematic, let's say, because you can imagine if we were in the place of Slovenia, we could have much better situation, of course.
It's a blessed country, or like Austria. What I
Yeah,
propose now, Gia, is to close the interview officially and to thank you very much also officially. Maybe you want to make a last statement and some kind of closing remark?
nothing else. I need to sleep now. Sorry. It was interesting discussion, but anyway.
No, it was very good interview. I want to thank you. It's a major contribution also for the economic history development and also documentation, your interview now. And I thank you very much for that. I will now say thank you. I will close first the recording. 1 second. Don't run away. I will just closed your